Good morning, friends. Today we're going to talk about fairy tales. Now, there are lots of different fairy tales, and today I'm going to read some little less traditional ones. So, our first fairy tale for today is Falling for Rapunzel by Leah Wilcox. Once upon a bad hair day, a prince rode up Rapunzel's way. From up above he heard her whine, upset her hair had lost its shine. He thought her crying was a plea, and sallied forth to set her free. Alas, she was too far away to make out what he would say. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, throw down your hair." She thought he said, "Your underwear." Look, she's throwing underpants down. "No, Rapunzel, your curly locks." Rapunzel threw down dirty socks. "Please, love, just your silky tresses." She thought he asked for silky dresses. In lace and frills up to his head, the prince's cheeks were blushing red. "Rapunzel, do you have a rope?" Rapunzel dropped a cantaloupe. It burst in pieces on his head. "Oh, bad catch," Rapunzel said. "Perhaps," he sighed, "this is a test." And bound by love, he did not rest. "Okay, Rapunzel, how about twine?" She heaved out her blue ribbon swine. By now the prince was feeling hammered, not to mention less enamored. He growled, "Do you have a ladder?" Rapunzel tossed out pancake batter. It covered him from head to toe. She yelled, "It's better cooked, you know." At this the poor prince had a cry, then cupped his hands for one last try. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your braid." Confused, Rapunzel pushed out her maid. The maid fell squarely on the prince, quite pleased with the coincidence. She nimbly jumped up off his lap and soon revived the flattened chap. Then smiling said, "For what it's worth, you'll find I'm really down to earth." His young heart thrilled, he gave a hoot. For what was more, the maid was cute. She set the prince upon his steed, then leapt behind with graceful speed, and leaning close so he could hear, she whispered something in his ear. "I fell for you when we first met." He nodded. "How could I forget?" Rapunzel watched them ride from sight. "I'm glad I finally heard him right. I hope if they come back for more, they'll think to knock on my back door." So that was a fun, silly fairy tale because in regular Rapunzel, we know that she's trapped in the tower and she lets down her long, long hair so that the prince can climb up and save her. So the next story I have, I wanted to show you what you can make today. The items that we have to make are, of course, based on fairy tales, and one that we'll be reading a fractured version of later, but the houses of the three little pigs. So you can come and get the materials to make your own straw house, your own stick house, and your own brick house. And also down on the porch, waiting in the craft bag, are the materials so that you can make your own little fairy. And now your fairy may not look exactly like this. Your fairy may look a little bit different, and that's what makes it fun. So, speaking of fairies, the next story that we are going to read, you're going to see all different kinds of fairies and what they look like. This is called Come to the Fairies Ball by Jane Yolen. Come one and come all, come great and come small, come winged and come wingless, bejeweled or ringless, come walking or riding, come gawking or gliding, come soaring or sliding, come all to the fairies' ball. Invitations delivered in hovel and hall, in barnyard and arbor, in treetop and stall, they all read the same. Come to the ball. P.S. Don't be late. And then what a tizzy, a flap, and a pother, a terrible foo-for-ah, swivet and bother, a twitter, a dither, oh my, what a rumble, a fret and a fuss and a fidget and grumble. Where are my boots? Where is my crown? And please tell me, where is my spider web gown? Where is my top hat? And where is my lace? We're looked everywhere and they're not any place. Everybody's getting ready. Have you looked in the closet and under the cot? We've looked and that's where they're decidedly not. Have you looked in the wardrobe or next to the stair? We've looked and our garb is not there. Have you looked in a bird's nest or under a tree? That's not where our best garb is likely to be. Oh! They're all looking around for their outfits. But there was one fairy whose dress was too torn from hanging a year on a prickly thorn. Oh dear. Then dressed in their finest in cape, crown, and shawl, the others all went to the fairies' own ball. We're not going to be late. They're all dressed up. They rode off in wagons, on turtles, on hares. They were packed piggybacking into butterfly chairs. Look at these butterfly chairs. How cool is that? They were towed there by swans. They were rowed there by fish. And one group of 5 got there fast on a wish. And those who had wings flew themselves to the hall, and they all came on time to the fairies' own ball. Except that one fairy, bereft and forlorn, whose raggedy dress hung high on a thorn. She settled herself on a toadstool and wept, while round and about her the busy ants crept. Do not weep, little fairy, but do as we do. Work makes matters better. You'll see that this is true. Thank you, ants. She got up and sewed 3 petals together and used what was left for the softest shoe leather. She fastened the fringe of a fern for a shawl, and late, oh so late, she took off for the ball. At the hall, what a clamor, a hue and a cry. What a fairy folk glamour beset ear and eye. There were fiddlers and fifers and pipers and all who were greeting the guests at the fairies' own ball. Tiptoe and heel-toe, they dipped and they danced. They shook, shuffled, shimmied. They bowed and they pranced. They trotted and trembled. They waltzed, waddled, winged. They hopped and gavodded. They floated and flinged. You see them all dancing? There's all different fairies dancing about. These are very, very pretty pictures. And just when the clock struck 1:45, and just when the king announced dancing was done, that one long-lost fairy appeared at the gate. Oh, please, sir, she wheezed. Sir, I'm sorry, I'm late. She and the ants did a good job putting her dress back together. You're late, roared the king, and the dinner plate shook. You're late, cried the queen, and she gave her the look. But the prince of the fairies came down from his throne. He held out his hand to that fairy alone. Before you arrived, I hated this ball. There was no one I wanted to dance with at all. I told both my parents I wanted to go, but mother said never, and father said no. But then you arrived, he said right in her ear, and I wanted to start dancing because you are here. In the year that soon followed, the two of them wed, and letters sent out to the fairies all read. Come one and come all, come great and come small, come winged and come wingless, bejeweled or ringless, come walking or riding, come gawking or gliding, come soaring or sliding, come all, to our own wedding ball. Now, this is a beautiful book that you can come and borrow. So I have a song about fairy tales, and you may recognize some of the characters in this song. Once upon a time, in a land so far away, a princess kissed a frog. Well, that just made his day. Far across the town, Red Riding Hood took a fright. She found a wolf in Granny's bed, and when she told her goodnight, oh, fairy tales, read them every day. Oh, what fun it is to hear how Goldilocks got away. Fairy tales, full of joy and laughter. Do you know how this one ends? Why, it's happily ever after. And the fairy tales that were mentioned in this book in this song are The Princess and the Frog, which we do have a few copies of, and we even have the Disney movie. We have a couple different versions of Little Red Riding Hood, and we have a couple different versions of Goldilocks. And some of those are really, really fun. And some of those are what we call fractured fairy tales. Now, a fractured fairy tale is a different take on the fairy tale that you remember. For example, we have a Cinderella story called Bigfoot Cinderella, which is, instead of the slipper being itty bitty, it's about a Sasquatch, and she has the biggest foot at the ball. So those are really fun stories because they're told in a completely different way than you're used to. And usually they're really funny. So for our fractured fairy tale today, we have the true story of the Three Little Pigs by A. Wolfe, as told to John Sakaiska. I'm never going to pronounce that man's name right, and I apologize. Illustrated by Lane Smith. Everybody knows the story of the Three Little Pigs, or at least they think they do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows the real story because nobody has ever heard my side of the story. I'm the wolf, Alexander T. Wolfe. You can call me Al. I don't know how this whole big bad wolf thing got started, but it's all wrong. Maybe it's because of our diet. Hey, it's not my fault wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies and sheep and pigs. That's just the way we are. If cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think you were big and bad too. But like I was saying, the whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. This is the real story. Way back in Once Upon a Time, I was making a birthday cake for my dear old granny, and I had a terrible sneezing cold. I ran out of sugar. So I walked down the street to ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar. Now, this neighbor was a pig, and he wasn't too bright either. He had built his whole house out of straw. Can you believe it? I mean, who in his right mind would build a house out of straw? So, of course, the minute I knocked on the door, it fell right in. I didn't want to just walk into someone else's house, so I called, "Little pig, little pig, are you in there?" No answer. I was just about to go home without a cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday. That's when my nose started to itch. I felt a sneeze coming on. Well, I huffed, and I snuffed, and I sneezed a great sneeze. Achoo! See the little pig's bottom. And you know what? That whole darn straw house fell down. And right in the middle of the pile of straw was that first little pig, dead as a doornail. He'd been home the whole time. It seemed like a shame to leave a perfectly good ham dinner lying there in the straw, so I ate it up. Think of it as a big cheeseburger, just lying there. I was feeling a little bit better, but I still didn't have my cup of sugar, so I went to the next neighbor's house. This neighbor was First Little Pig's brother. He was smarter, but not much. He built his house out of sticks. I rang the bell on the stick house. Nobody answered. I called Mr. Pig. Mr. Pig, are you in? He yelled, "Go away, Wolf. You can't come in. I'm shaving the hairs on my chinny chin chin." I had just grabbed the doorknob when I felt another sneeze coming on. I huffed and I snuffed and I tried to cover my mouth, but I sneezed a great big sneeze. Achoo! And you're not going to believe it, but this guy's house fell down just like his brother's. And when the dust cleared, there was the second pig, dead as a doornail. Wolf's honor. Now, you know food will spoil if you just leave it out in the open. So I did the only thing there was to do. I had dinner again. Think of it as a second helping. I was getting awful full, but my cold was feeling a little bit better, and I still didn't have that cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. So I went to the next house. This guy was the first and second little pig's brother. He must have been the brains of the family, because he had built his house out of bricks. I knocked on the brick house. No answer. I called, "Mr. Pig! Mr. Pig! Are you in?" And do you know what that rude little porker answered? "Get out of here, Wolf! Don't bother me again!" Talk about impolite. He probably had a whole sack full of sugar. And he wouldn't even give me one little cup for my dear sweet old granny's birthday cake? What a pig! I was just about to go home and maybe make a nice birthday card instead of a cake when I felt my cold coming on. I huffed, and I snuffed, and I sneezed once again. Achoo! And then the third little pig yelled, "And your old granny can sit on a pin." That's not very nice. That pig looks kind of scary. Now, I'm usually a pretty calm fellow. But when somebody talks about my granny like that, I go a little crazy. When the cops drove up, of course, I was trying to break down this pig's door. And the whole time I was huffing and puffing and sneezing and making a real scene. The rest, they say, is history. The newspapers reporters found out about the two pigs I'd had for dinner. They figured a sick guy was going to borrow a cup of sugar. Didn't sound very exciting. So they jazzed up the story with all that huff and puff and blow your house down. And they made me the big bad wolf. That's it. Real story. I was framed. Maybe you could loan me a cup of sugar? And see, that is a little bit different from the fairy tales that we know. Maybe you can make up your own fairy tale instead of, the wicked witch from Snow White being jealous of Snow White. Maybe she has some other motivation. Maybe she just doesn't know how to talk to kids. Or maybe Ursula the Sea Witch, maybe she is upset that she doesn't get invited to any of the parties. So it might be really interesting for you to tell your own fairy tale from a different point of view. So just as a reminder, down on the porch, we have the materials to make this adorable little fairy and for you to make your own homes of the three little pigs. And there's a few other fun little pages in there for you to do. So that is all for me today. So now I shall say, so long now, till next time. See you later, alligator and a wild crocodile. Have a good day. Bye-bye.